nung ako'y papunta rito at tinanong ko, is there any particular subject that you would like me to speak about? It was about your theme, which is to end impunity. If elected, how will you intend to end the senseless media killings and the culture of impunity in our country? Well, siguro, masasabi ko, isang diretsahang tanong ay dapat ay bigyan natin ng diretsahang sagot. Kaya, ngunit bago ako magsimula, magliligoy-ligoy pa ng konti, ay alam naman ninyo, ako ay naghain ng aking kandidatura noong October 13 bilang isang Pangulo o Vice Presidente sa halalan ng 2016. At bilang pangalawang Pangulo ng ating Demokratikong Republika, ay tinatanong sa akin, anong una mong gagawin kapag nagkataon na ikaw nahalal na Vice Presidente, anong una mong gagawin bilang serbisyo sa bayan? At ang aking unang-unang gagawin ay napakasimple lamang, ano pa kung hindi bibisitahin ang ating bagong halal na Pangulo, sino man ang ihalal ng taong bayan, katambal ko man siya o hindi, upang makipagpulong sa kanya. At ipapahayag ko sa kanya ang aking buong suporta sa kanyang magiging programa at administrasyon. At ipararating ko sa kanya ng buong puso ang aking pagnanais na siya ay makakapagtrabaho at sana ako ay maging bahagi ng kanyang kabinete at pamahalaan. Ito ay upang makatulong ng mabuti sa kanyang mga layunin at programa para sa ating bansa. Lagi kong sinisigaw na may lugar ang politika, ngunit kapag tapos na ang halalan, tapos na ang proklamasyon, dapat isang tabi na muna ang politika at ipagkaisa muli. We must heal the wounds once again, the wounds that were open during the campaign. It is only in this way, I believe, it is only in this way that we can move the country forward. We have experienced in the past few years very clearly the opposite approach. Kung saan nakikita natin na alang-alang sa politika ay tayong mga kapwa Pilipino ay pinag-aaway-away. At tayo ay pinagwawatak-watak, nangyayari nawawatak ang ating lipunan dahil alang-alang sa partido, dahil alang-alang lang sa politika. At alam naman natin ang naging resulta ay hindi gumaganda ang buhay ng ating mga kababayan. Kaya dapat siguro palitan na natin ang ating dating pag-iisip at ibalik natin ang pag-iisip na sa ating hindi lamang sa ating mga opisyal, kung hindi sa ating mga mahal na mamamayan na magkaisa na ang mga Pilipino. Kaya ito ang una kong gagawin at makikipag-isa ako kung sino man ang magiging Pangulo sa kahit na anong programa at para makikita natin na makakatulong sa taong bayan. I have also been giving some thought to the constant question as to the possible areas in which I would be most effective and in which I could be helpful to the next administration. Dahil ang aking pangunahing misyon ay ang pagpapalakas ng ating paggawa at pagpapalawig ng trabaho sa bansa, iaalay ko sa kanya ang aking serbisyo sa DOLE. Siguro yun ang magiging first choice ko. Dahil ang isa sa pinakamalaking problema na hinaharap ng ating mga kababayan ay ang trabaho. At marami naman tayo na maaaring magawa. And I hope and I think that my background by training in economics will help me in this regard. Na alam naman natin 90% ng empleyado ay nasa private sector, 10% ay nasa public sector. Kaya naman ang trabaho dapat na maging ang gawin ng gobyerno ay magtayo ng mga programa at proyekto para ihanda ang mga manggagawa para makapasok sila sa mga trabaho na ibinanagyan sa private sector. However, I would also offer my assistance to the President in solving other equally urgent problems. I have experience, of course, in local government. That is where I came from, and that is what I continue to champion. But I am also very frustrated watching the problems of the DOTC. And I would ask, bigay mo na sa akin yung DOTC para maayos ko na yung mga problema yan. Hindi naman siguro ganun kahirap. But we may be getting ahead of ourselves. as this is something that we still have to work very hard for, and 6 months, yes, we all know, is a very long time in Philippine politics. The other problem that I think that we should face and that we should squarely address is that of criminality in our country. The rising criminality of our country and the public perception that we are gradually descending into a state of chaos. No less than the PNP has recently reported that there is a 46% spike in the national crime rate. Sabi nila, improved reporting crime rates daw. Meaning, our crime rate really has not gone up. Ngunit mas maganda na rin ang naging reporting. Kaya now, although it has not increased, now we have an accurate figure. And because these low crime stats came from official PNP reports, the press relayed and cascaded the same to the public. And to this we shall relate the very alarming statistics about the abominable media killings here in our country. I say that it is related because taking any person's life, especially that of an innocent, is always abhorrent, as it is contrary to natural and moral law. It is always wrong. To even entertain the thought, one would have to come up with strong moral justifications and excuses to overturn the natural order and present unacceptable or at least palatable less evil alternative. For example, to save someone else's life, to prevent further suffering of another person, protect the public order and the common good. It's the same when a journalist or media person is killed. It is just as senseless as any other ordinary homicide or murder on the streets. It is always revolting and deserving of public condemnation and outrage of the highest degree. But what sets apart the journalists and the members of the media is the peculiar nature of their function in our society. The function of which is characterized as a public service and essential to the healthy functioning of society. Media is the special army of our citizenry, who by their profession bring light and speak and write about things which the general public would not have the capacity or the time or one would not even have the knowledge how to collect this information. Hindi tulad ng pangkaraniwang mamamayan, nananalaytay sa dugo sa DNA ng mamahayag, ang pagiging mausisa, ang maraming tanong-tanong, ang pagiging masigasig at makulit, at ang pagiging buskador at husgador. But it seems that the role of the media and the value of the media's public service and function in Philippine society are either not appreciated or clearly misunderstood or even opposed. It has been reported by the Committee to Protect Journalists that we currently stand third in the rankings of the world's most dangerous place to work for a journalist, next only to Iraq and Syria. What is disturbing here, aside from the sheer numbers, is the fact we are not even in a state of conflict or of war, whether internal or regional. The CPJ cited not only our weak and snail-paced justice system, but also this so-called culture of impunity, both of which prevent adequate protection and redress for the aggrieved victims of media violence and contribute to the vicious cycle of unabated and senseless violence directed at the media practitioners. I dare submit that this problem of media-directed violence is related to the problem of rising criminality in our country. And both are born of a cancerous cultural problem that we seem to be suffering from. This cultural problem is made possible and at the same time perpetuated by a toxicity in our very system which ultimately creates this vicious cycle. If we view it as a cultural problem, then the most effective solutions are necessarily those that will address the problem at its roots, down at the individual core components of our system that are affected and paralyzed by such a malignancy. If we understand the problem at its root, we will realize that while indeed we are not in a state of conflict or war, we are in a state of conflict with our own selves, it seems. Allow me to offer a diagnosis of the problem. Let us lay down a typical scenario. When a journalist is killed, almost always, or 97% of the time, it is connected with the performance of their duties. It is connected with a report or a commentary that was made that is critical of a person in power, a person in authority, or a person of influence, or a public figure who is vested with public interest and entrusted with public funds. The problem is that the people who are invested and entrusted with the public interest and other similar public figures do not understand the essence of why they are in power in the first place, and hence in constant public scrutiny. They are unaware of their social contract with the people, and more often than not are inebriated by a false perception that they are in power rather than that they are in public service. Worse, they have this grossly mistaken illusion that they are untouchable, that they are above everybody else and that they are above the law. Sa ganitong mga opisyal at mga taong ganito, ang tingin nila sa taong bayan ay mga balakid o mga sagabal o di kaya mga peste at mga makukulit na tao na nagmamakawa para sa tulong mula sa kanilang gobyerno. Ang nasa isip nila sa mga ganitong klaseng mga ito ay walang basagan ng trip. No one should dare to get in the way, certainly not the media. Kapag ikaw ay nakitang haharang-harang at nakakasagabal sa kanilang mga gawain at ikaw ay makakasira sa kanilang magagandang muka at mabangong pangalan sa publiko, tatapusin ka. Clearly we see that either the role of the media is not understood or it is the role of the public servant and the public official that is not viewed correctly. Or perhaps it is a dual misunderstanding of their roles in our society. The key here is education. It is empowerment, which should be constant and which should continue. We have to continuously educate and remind our public servants and our own people themselves as regards the essence of public office and the role of the media in it. All of us have to be made aware and ingrained into our thinking the basic precept of the sovereign Filipino people that public office is a public trust and that public officials are always accountable to the people, which principles are etched no less than in our Constitution. We must educate and empower our people such that we elevate into public office only those who are aware and mindful, agree, and believe in these non-negotiable sovereign principles, bar none. Continuing with our typical example of media violence. What happens if violence against a member of the media is perpetrated? Of course, by routine legal process, the matter is brought under our criminal justice system. Now we have to admit that all the 5 pillars of our criminal justice system are flawed and have inherent weaknesses. Hence, we also have to do something about the defective institutions within the pillars of the criminal justice system. We must be willing to work with the departments under the executive branch to map out and implement the solutions to improve our institutions and their processes. There is much to be desired in our 4 pillars: law enforcement, prosecution, courts, and corrections. They should always be effective and efficient, diligent and relentless in their mandates. From investigation, case build-up, to the filing of cases, from arrest to prosecution, up to promulgation of judgment and up until execution of penalties. And we have to ensure that the convict serves out their sentence with complete deprivation of liberty, power, and resources, not with the complete amenities and comforts of home or yung tinatawag nilang kubur. And in doing so, the government pillars must always be free and insulated from the influence of politics and the very tempting bad apple of corruption. While we are at it, let us find ways to speed up the entire criminal justice system. Justice is measured not only by the ultimate triumph in a drawn-out litigation war, but also in the daily battles suffered and won by the families of the aggrieved during each passing hearing day in court, and route to what may possibly be just an illusory victory in the end. I read recently that the Chief Justice Lourdes Sereno recently said in a forum, if only a fraction of the attention given to Aldab can be lavished on issues in reforming the justice system, then truly the Filipino people will reap the best that technology has to offer. This is a message of hope for us, because no less than the Chief Justice is eager and bold to try new technologies and how they can be harnessed to reform our judicial system. The executive must build workable channels with the Supreme Court through which it may be possible for the executive judiciary to work hand in hand to help implement the program of judicial reform of the Chief Justice, and how its implementation could tie up with efforts of the executive branch in order to improve the overall efficiency of our criminal justice system. The fifth pillar of the criminal justice system, the community, is likewise in need of strengthening. Let us develop stronger communities, crucially aided by constant education and empowerment of the people. Echoing once again the Chief Justice, let us take advantage of technology. We have to improve our procedures for security in our tracking and communication system. And I remember an attack against a local journalist made inside the studio of his radio station years ago. The sole reason that we know about it and that it went viral and that the speed at which it caught the public's attention and instantly generated public outrage was precisely because of the existence of the CCTV footage. Kung pwede siguro at practical, sana may daladalang CCTV ang lahat ng media practitioner, kahit sila sa kumanta. Pero mangyayari siguro niyan, mawawala tayo ng mga periodista at saka journalist at dadami ang ating media personality kung hindi mga showbiz personality. Of course, we also have to reform our laws in such a way that the legal system will not be abused by those in power and used against members of the media by way of leverage and harassment in order to force media to negotiate with them and to accommodate their wishes. We have to decriminalize libel against journalists. As a former member of the Senate and the House of Representatives, I could work with my former colleagues to build consensus and the will to repeal and amend that outdated libel law. However, at the same time, we have to ensure that a fair and effective remedy for redress against the media is put in place. Siyempre, hindi natin maiiwasan na meron talagang masasaktan sa mga banat ng media at maghahanap ng kaukulang remedyo. But of course, I recognize that the remedy should be internal or within the media itself, meaning it should be characterized by effective self-regulation. With that effective remedy in place, the subjects of media criticism will have full faith and confidence in the system and will be able to lodge their grievances with a proper forum in the hope of getting fair and commensurate vindication rather than be tempted to take the law into their own hands. The media profession and the free press itself should work towards improving itself and develop itself to be stronger and united, albeit diffuse and diverse. It must remain credible and ethical, free, independent, organized and brought together only by their common ideal and aspiration to improve their profession. The differences in opinions and their varied organizational and corporate allegiances should always be subordinated to their primary role in public service, which should be measured only by credibility, accuracy, freedom, independence, ethics, and responsibility, true to the ideals enshrined in the Journalist Code of Ethics. Through effective self-regulation, abetted by a healthy spirit of competition, the Philippine media industry can discover the natural order of things within its ranks and be able, once more, to separate the real and genuine from the pseudo-journalists, the media vampires, the media zombies, or to borrow your own language, the so-called house-shound media. To recapitulate, through a holistic diagnosis of the problem of media violence in our country, we will see that it is in fact a complex problem, with malignancies operating locally and separately at various levels and institutions of our society in general, but producing an effect that is gruesome and atrocious to our humanity and our decency as a society. In order to address this complex cultural problem, we have to go down to the very root causes. I am committed to devote my entire term to work out and implement the solutions pursuant to this previous analysis. Sa aking mga layuning ito, para sa kaayusan ng ating mga pamahalaan at lipunan, sa kaligtasan ng taong bayan, lalo na mamahayag, ang hiling at dalangin ko ay ang inyong suporta para sa inyong lingkod upang ang mga ito ay ating mapagtutulungan, maging katotohanan at hinaharap. To end, I offer these ruminations in my hope for a better tomorrow for our country, to the memories of the 32 journalists who were slain in Maguindanao in 2009. I also dedicate this to the memory of Mark Wilson Chua, was murdered in 2001 as a consequence of his exposition of corruption in his school. Even as a student, he knew that sunlight was the best disinfectant. He now lives on as a symbol of fearless journalism amongst our youth and amongst our people. Likewise, I offer this to the memory of the countless other journalists and media personalities who in the course of our history have died in the exercise of their profession and in the service of a truly informed and empowered and intelligent Filipino people. Mabuhay ang malayang pamamahayag sa Pilipinas at sa buong mundo. Mabuhay ang National Press Club